I had spent 3 months restoring the copper backsplash in the wedding reception hall. Every inch polished, every dent smoothed, every imperfection erased until it gleamed like a mirror. A mirror so perfect that it reflected not just the room, but the intentions hidden within it. I adjusted my veil, and in that reflection I saw her first, Eleanor, my mother-in-law, standing behind me, immobile, poised, radiating the kind of calm only someone who believes herself untouchable can radiate. She did not notice me. She did not notice the subtle narrowing of my eyes, the tiny flicker of awareness that ran along my spine. She did not see the way my fingers curled lightly around the stem of my champagne glass. She only saw the object, the glass, the vessel, the opportunity. Slowly, almost ritualistically, she drew a small glass vial from her clutch. Her movements were precise, practiced as though she had performed this act countless times in her mind. 3 clear drops fell, almost invisible, into my champagne. Silence. The noise of the reception faded for me, shrunk to the rhythm of my heartbeat. I did not flinch. I did not turn. I did not scream. I waited, letting her finish her gesture, letting her glide across the room to greet a senator's wife, every smile, every movement designed to convince the world she was nothing but perfect. And then, with deliberate care, with the steady hands of someone who understands the anatomy of collapse, I swapped our glasses. Her poison now rested in her hand. Her control, as she imagined it, was already slipping through her fingers like water through a sieve. Most brides would have panicked. Most brides would have run, flailing, hands trembling, pulse racing out of control, overwhelmed by fear. Most brides would have imagined disaster, imagined the inevitable humiliation. But I am not most brides. I am a restoration architect. I spend my life standing amid crumbling structures, examining failing foundations, analyzing stress points, calculating loads, predicting failure. Panic is a luxury I cannot afford. What I felt in that moment was not fear. It was static load, the immense silent weight a beam carries when it is straining beneath a roof. When it is the difference between holding everything above it in place or shattering catastrophically. I understood that weight. I carried it, and I moved through it with measured, conscious precision. I walked back to the head table. My heels clicked against the polished hardwood floor, each step deliberate, a metronome marking the rhythm of my controlled heartbeat. My pulse, 80 beats per minute. Elevated, yes, but contained, balanced. I smoothed the folds of my silk dress with calculated movements, sat beside Ethan, the man who saves children's lives every day, yet could not see that his own mother had become a threat. He squeezed my hand under the table, thumb brushing my ring, whispering that I looked beautiful. 10 feet away, Eleanor raised the champagne to her lips, drinking the liquid she imagined would destroy me, her eyes glinting with the satisfaction of control. She smiled, laughed, charmed the room, the perfect matriarch. Every tilt of her head, every flicker of her eyelash, every deliberate gesture radiated confidence, dominance, and subtle menace. She looked at me, her gaze slicing through the space between us, cold, calculated, masked with layers of foundation and mascara. She raised her glass, my glass, in a silent toast. A smirk that whispered, "Checkmate, darling." She believed she controlled everything. She believed she could erase me with money, influence, or a vial of poison. She did not understand that I had been watching her for 2 years. Every act, every word, every tiny crack she had tried to create in my life had been catalogued, memorized, anticipated. I picked up my water glass. My hand did not shake. I lifted it slowly, deliberately, letting the room see nothing but a bride. Sipping water, cold, clear, pure, tasting like clarity, like focus, like the invisible power of knowing every move before it is made. I watched her drink again, self-assured, confident, completely blind to the fact that her plan had already failed. Eleanor had spent 2 years trying to dismantle me. Whispered insults. Dismissals disguised as advice. Bribes. Social manipulations. Tiny fractures designed to make me stumble. But she had forgotten one critical fact about restoration architects. We know exactly where the weak points lie. We know exactly when the structure is about to collapse. We understand the silent stress, the invisible forces, the moment when all weight comes together and the system either survives or fails. Asterisk, I smiled to myself, not from joy, not from cruelty. I smiled because I understood the architecture of her war. From the moment Ethan introduced us, I had been a zoning violation in her perfectly curated world. She had underestimated me, miscalculated, believed her influence. Her legacy, her money, and her charm were enough to erase me. They were not. Asterisk, every gesture, every smile, every interaction she had performed over the past 2 years had been laying the foundation for today. Today she had triggered the final phase, and I was ready. I was calm. I was aware. I understood the timing, the sequence, the weight of every decision. This was not a wedding. This was a battlefield. And the bride, silently, had already claimed control. Even as the room celebrated, my mind was calculating, observing, anticipating. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, the murmurs of conversation, all of it faded into the background. My eyes never left Eleanor. Every movement she made, every tilt of her head, every gesture was a calculation. She believed she was orchestrating the perfect performance, the benevolent matriarch, gracious and elegant, the perfect hostess, but I could see behind the mask. I could see the intent. I could see the cold, calculated fury beneath the surface. Asterisk, 2 years of subtle sabotage had led to this moment. The invitations she forgot to send me, the casual dismissals to her friends, the whispered undermining of my work, the little cracks she had tried to create in my confidence, all of it built toward this final strike. A structure only the most meticulous architect could see coming. And I had seen it. I had memorized every detail, anticipated every move, traced every potential path of her plan. Asterisk, Ethan leaned closer under the table, his hand brushing mine. You're amazing, he whispered. I smiled faintly, keeping my composure.
The man
who saves lives could not see that a carefully constructed danger was only feet away. That the enemy he loved most was plotting the exact moment to destroy me, but I could see it. I always could. Asterisk, the flashbacks came unbidden. The inspection of the Sterling estate, my work boots dusty, my hands streaked with drywall, her gaze cutting me down with invisible daggers. The first time she questioned Ethan right in front of me, asking if I was merely hired help for some remodeling project. The countless dinners I had been subtly excluded from, the introductions phrased to minimize me, the offers of money to simply disappear. Each moment was a piece of the foundation she hoped would crumble under me. Asterisk, and then 6 months ago, the cashier's check. $100,000 slid across her mahogany desk like a velvet rope, attempting to buy my silence, my compliance, my disappearance. You'll never belong here, she said. I had returned it with a single sentence. I'm not for sale. That had been the turning point. The moment her eyes first shifted from annoyance to calculation. From seeing me as a nuisance to seeing me as a threat. And threats in her world had to be neutralized. Asterisk, now, at the reception, the culmination of her plans was unfolding. Every gesture, every action was part of the final design, to humiliate, to control, to prove dominance. She believed she had orchestrated the perfect moment. She had positioned herself, the wine, the smiles, the audience. She was confident, radiant, untouchable. And yet, she had failed to anticipate one crucial factor. I knew the structure, the architecture of her attack, the points where it could be undone. Asterisk, I watched her sip again, a little too slowly, a little too deliberately, her eyes scanning the room as if to challenge anyone who might notice. Her control radiated outward, but I could see the tension beneath it. The careful balance she maintained, the silent calculation in every movement. I did not flinch. I did not give a signal. I simply sat, water in hand, calm, controlled. The room could erupt around me. The structure of her plan could collapse, and I would remain unshaken. Asterisk, every sound, the music, the laughter, The conversation was a backdrop to the silent war happening across the table. Each smile she flashed at a guest, each tilt of her glass, was a calculated maneuver, and I catalogued them all, stored them in memory. I could almost see the pattern forming, the trajectory of her plan. She thought she controlled the narrative. She thought she had the upper hand. She did not see that every single move she had made over 2 years had been anticipated. And I had already written the countermeasure in my mind. Asterisk, even the tiniest details were significant. The way her gloves fit her hands, the tension in her shoulders, the slight quiver when she reached for the champagne. I noticed it all. I stored it, every millisecond of motion, every micro-expression. I knew when the moment would come, when the tension would peak, and when the collapse could be orchestrated to perfection not by her, but by the one she had underestimated. Asterisk, and as the head table continued to celebrate, as the toasts were made and glasses clinked, I allowed myself the faintest smile. Not from triumph, not yet. But because I knew the architecture of her failure, the pattern of her hubris. She thought she was in control. She was about to discover how fragile even the most carefully constructed plan could be when met with precision, patience, and awareness. Asterisk, I raised my water glass slightly, just enough for her to notice the contrast. Her champagne glass gleamed in the ambient light, the golden liquid reflecting the chandeliers. She drank again, utterly unaware that the stakes had shifted. Every second brought the moment closer, the moment where the structure she had built. For years her careful manipulation, her silent sabotage, her invisible threats would finally fracture. Asterisk, and I waited, not with fear, not with anxiety, but with the calm certainty of someone who understands the weight of the load, the points of weakness, and the inevitability of collapse. The bride, the architect, the observer, and the survivor all in one. The room was alive with celebration, but I was detached, observing, calculating. Every laugh, every clink of crystal, every whispered compliment to the bride or groom faded into the background. My focus was singular, Eleanor. Every movement she made, every tilt of her head, every flutter of her eyelashes, was a piece of the architecture she believed would undo me. But I had seen it all coming. I had anticipated it. Asterisk, she lifted her glass again, golden liquid catching the light, shimmering like sunlight trapped in crystal. A single toast to me, a silent smirk that said, "Checkmate, darling." And for a fleeting moment I let the tension stretch, let the room wait unknowingly while the predator believed herself untouchable. Asterisk, I did not flinch. I did not react. I raised my water glass, the clarity and coldness of it a silent signal to myself. I took a slow, deliberate sip, tasting control, focus, and the calm that comes from knowing every move before it is made. I watched her sip the champagne she intended as my ruin. She was confident, radiant, assured, entirely blind to the trap she had already walked into. Asterisk, the flashbacks rushed in, unbidden. The estate inspection, my boots caked in dust, my hands streaked with grime, her eyes judging me as though I were contagious, the whispered insults disguised as concern. The dinners I had been excluded from. The little gestures, the tiny cracks she had attempted to create in my life, all forming a web of control she thought I would stumble through. Asterisk, and yet I had memorized it all. Every insult, every slight, every microsecond of her calculation. Every tiny act of sabotage, every attempt to humiliate me. Every carefully curated scene she had staged to undermine my confidence, catalogued, understood, anticipated. She believed she was orchestrating perfection. But she had miscalculated. She had overlooked the one constant she could not control. Me, Ethan, oblivious to the danger a few feet away, leaned toward me under the table. "You're amazing," he whispered, brushing his thumb over my ring. I allowed a small, controlled smile, letting him believe in the illusion of normalcy. He did not see what I saw. He did not see the architecture of her plan, but I did. I always did. 2 years of meticulous undermining had led to this moment. And now her final phase unfolded. The poised smile, the perfect laughter, the elegance designed to mask intent, all of it was the last act of her extinction burst. Her final desperate attempt to assert control before the collapse. She did not see the pivot point. She did not see the trap. Asterisk, I felt it in every fiber of my body. The weight of anticipation. The tension in the room, the invisible lines of power and influence stretching like beams ready to snap. Every second counted. Every glance was loaded with intent. I could almost hear the structure groaning, the invisible stress points of her plan vibrating beneath the polished surface of the celebration. Asterisk, then came the shift. A subtle, almost imperceptible tremor in her hand as she lifted the glass again. A flicker of uncertainty. A breath held too long. The first cracks forming in the structure she had so carefully built. I did not move. I did not speak. I waited, still poised, letting time stretch. The predator had walked into her own trap. Asterisk. My water glass caught the light. Cold. Clear. The reflection off the copper backsplash mirrored not just my face, but the clarity of thought, the precision of planning, the inevitability of what was about to happen. I watched Eleanor sip, the golden liquid gleaming in the crystal, and felt the silent satisfaction of knowing that the architecture of her plan was fracturing. Asterisk, every detail mattered. The tension in her shoulders, the subtle stiffness in her posture, the slight quiver as she swallowed. She was confident, yes, but the pressure was building. She did not yet realize that the very weapon she had intended for me had already been redirected. And in this silent, tense moment, the final act began. To right itself. Asterisk, I allowed myself one small, controlled smile. Not of triumph, not yet, but of awareness, of understanding. The room could erupt in chaos around me. The plans she had laid so meticulously could collapse, and I would remain unmoved, observing, calculating, surviving. The battle had begun. The room erupted in laughter and applause as Ethan finished his speech, every word charming, every gesture perfect. The guests were unaware that beneath the sparkling chandeliers and delicate floral arrangements, a silent war was about to erupt. My eyes never left Eleanor. She rose, regal in her silver gown, her posture impeccable, every movement rehearsed, every gesture deliberate. The champagne flute in her hand, the one she believed would ruin me, gleamed in the light, the golden liquid reflecting the grandeur of the hall. Asterisk, she turned her gaze toward me, a predator's smile on her face. Every high society guest, every whispering observer, was a pawn in the game she believed she controlled. Marriage, she began, her voice projecting with a refined, practiced cadence, is about partnership. It is about knowing who you are and where you come from. A few of her friends chuckled at table 4. She continued, and it is about trust, knowing that the person sitting next to you has your best interests at heart. Asterisk. Her eyes locked onto mine as she emphasized the word trust. I did not blink. I did not flinch. I raised my water glass, cold and clear, while she raised the poisoned chalice, a toast. To the happy couple? A gesture meant to humiliate, to harm, to assert dominance. I watched her tilt the glass back. One gulp, two. She drained it entirely, triumphant, convinced that her plan had succeeded. Asterisk, the room waited, the music paused, the clinking of glasses halted mid-air, and then it began. A subtle change at first, almost imperceptible. Her words faltered, her posture shifted. The practiced mask of elegance started to crumble. 1 minute passed, 2, and then at 2 minutes and 40 seconds, the first warning signs erupted. Asterisk, Eleanor froze mid-sentence, her face shifting from perfect porcelain to a violent gray. Her hands clawed at the tablecloth, pulling down a centerpiece of Lily with a crash that echoed like a gunshot in the stunned hall. The liquid, the symbol of her control, became the instrument of chaos as she convulsed violently. Her composure shattered before the eyes of 200 guests. Asterisk. Mom! Ethan shouted, jumping from his seat. His voice, trained for emergency and calm under pressure, filled the room. But even as he reached her, I remained seated, observing, analyzing. The structure had failed, just as I had anticipated.
The chaos
Unfolded exactly as the architecture of her plan dictated, but inverted. Redirected by precision, by calm, by understanding. Asterisk paramedics arrived within minutes, weaving through the stunned crowd. I guided the coordinator, cleared the path, commanded the room with quiet authority. Every motion measured, every instruction deliberate. Ethan knelt beside her, checking vitals, his training kicking in, his focus absolute. Pulse, airway, threat. Assessment, controlled, methodical, precise. The same man who saves lives had no idea how meticulously I had orchestrated the safety of this moment. Asterisk as Eleanor was lifted onto the stretcher. Her beaded clutch bag slipped from her lap, spilling its contents onto the polished floor. A lipstick, a compact mirror, and the small empty vial, the smoking gun. Next to it, a folded piece of cream-colored stationery. My eyes scanned the elegant looping script. It was hers, pre-written, prepared, planned. A blueprint for the narrative she intended to construct. A false story of my destruction framed as her own tragedy. Asterisk I handed the note to Ethan, his eyes widening as he read the words, the realization dawning. She had planned not just the poisoning, but the story, the frame, the manipulation of perception. The monster was not hidden under the bed. She had been tucking him in, guiding him, trusting him to misread reality. Asterisk Ethan's eyes hardened. The concern and confusion vanished, replaced by the clarity of a surgeon dissecting a critical failure. She is a criminal, he said, his voice cold, measured, detached. We press charges. Immediate restraining order. Evidence of premeditation. No negotiation. Asterisk he handed the pre-written note to the officer. This proves intent, he said. And just like that, the mother who had tried to destroy me was reduced to a subject of law, not influence. Her carefully constructed empire of intimidation, manipulation, and terror had crumbled in the hands of the woman she underestimated. Asterisk as the paramedics wheeled her away. The room buzzed with shock, fear, and confusion. And I, the bride, the observer, the architect, remained calm. Every moment measured, every step intentional. No tears, no hysteria. Just clarity, precision, control. The battle had been won not through brute force, but through understanding, patience, and the ability to anticipate collapse before it arrived. Asterisk I sat back, water in hand, and allowed myself the smallest smile. The golden lines of her plans had fractured. The chaos she intended for me had become her undoing. And in that quiet, calm, observant state, I knew the foundation of our lives, Ethan's and mine, was stronger than ever. Stronger for having survived the stress, the sabotage, and the assault. Asterisk, the architect of destruction had been neutralized. Not with revenge, not with malice, but with the quiet power of understanding, precision, and patience. The structure of our lives, tested by fire, stood unbroken. Imperfect, jagged, but unbreakable.